Okay, I'm starting.
Lisa's
Just starting.
Okay, well, hi everybody. Welcome to Read Story Hour. And I'm Lisa Reed. I'm the designated reader for today. My nephew Bennett asked me to do this. I can't tell him no to anything. So here I am, but I love to read. And I love to read to my children, and I love reading to my grandchildren now. So it's kind of been a gloomy week and a gloomy day. So it's a good day to curl up with the book and get some reading done. So I'm here with Ginger. I think Mary Liddy White named Ginger, our giraffe, and I'm here with the cow and some other little friends. And I wanted to remind you that Reed's is having its watermelon sale right now. Here's a watermelon, and you may have seen the video of Claude Clayton throwing the watermelon off and smashing it on the street to make the sale go. And that's kind of fun if you want to check that out. But anyway, if you buy $50 at Reed's during the watermelon sale, you get a free one of these. So everybody loves watermelon, so hope you'll do that. Okay, I picked books that I love to read for my children, and this one is called Jamberry. And it may have been read before in story time because it's very popular. And you know, every book has a title, Jamberry, and an author, and this one is by Bruce Deacon, and then also the person that does the pictures. And in this case, the author is also the person who does the pictures, Bruce Deacon, and that's a big word, illustrator. So that's a big word for today. He is the author and the illustrator. So maybe you have gone to a farmer's market or gone berry picking and gotten some fresh berries this year. I have, and they are so good. They're so good to make a cobbler with or just to eat. So I like this one because it's kind of a rhyme, and I like rhymes. Okay, here we go. One berry, two berry, pick me a blueberry. Hatberry, shoeberry, in my canoe berry. He's kind of lazying around in a canoe eating berries. That sounds like a fun summer day thing to do. Under the bridge and over the dam, looking for berries, berries for jam. Ooh, look, they went over the waterfall and the canoe turned upside down. All the berries went everywhere, but I think they're okay. Three berry, four berry, hayberry, strawberry. Finger and paw berry, my berry, your berry. Strawberry ponies, strawberry lambs, dancing in meadows of strawberry jam. That's kind of a maypole looking thing, and all the animals are dancing, just berries galore, berries everywhere. Quickberry, quackberry, pick me a blackberry. Trainberry, trackberry, clickety clackberry. Rumble and ramble in blackberry bramble, billions of berries for blackberry jamble. This is my favorite page, always. Raspberry, jazzberry, razzmatazberry. Berry band, merry band, jamming in berryland. I like that one because it's musical and I like the rhyme. And my kids always like that too. They like the razzmatazberry. Raspberry rabbits, raspberry band, elephants skating on raspberry jam. That's kind of funny. Elephants are skating on the raspberry jam and everybody's laughing and having a great time. Makes me want to eat some berries. Moonberry, starberry, cloudberry sky. Boomberry, zoomberry, rockets shoot by. Mountains and fountains rain down on me, buried in berries. What a jamboree. I think that's the end. And the author, Bruce Deacon, said when he was a little boy, the berries never came from the store. He always found them in fields, and his grandmother would take a big pot, and he would take a pail, and they would pick and pick, and didn't come home till they filled them with berries. And they would sit in the kitchen and eat berries and have fresh cream. So maybe you've been to a farm stand or even been out in the field picking berries somewhere, and that's so much fun. It's fun to eat them fresh. So anyway, that's Jamberry. Okay, next we have When I Was Young in the Mountains. And this book I picked because I love the mountains. I love the beach too. The ocean's beautiful, but we had gone to the mountains. We love the mountains in North Carolina, the Blue Ridge Mountains, and we have gone there on vacation. And so this book we got for our children because we remember we took them on trips to the mountains sometimes. So just imagine that you're living a long time ago, like maybe 100 years ago in the mountains, and you lived with your grandparents and you didn't have grocery stores and you didn't have a swimming pool. Instead of going to the grocery store, you would go to a little farm stand, and instead of going swimming in a pool, you would go to just the nearest creek or lake around in the mountains. So this book is When I Was Young in the Mountains by Cynthia Rylant. She's the author, and the illustrator, remember that word means the picture person, is Diane Good. And I think the pictures are really pretty in this. Okay. And remember, this is a long time ago, and it's in the mountains where they didn't just get in their car to go to the store. They had to walk everywhere. So it was different than how we live today. When I was young in the mountains, Grandfather came home in the evening, covered with black dust of a coal mine. Only his lips were clean, and he used them to kiss the top of my head. He's all dirty and full of soot because he's been working in a coal mine. So there she is, and there's her little brother. When I was young in the mountains, Grandmother spread the table with hot cornbread, pinto beans, and fried okra. That may be something that you like to eat now. And there they are having their dinner. Later in the middle of the night, she walked through the grass with me to the Johnny house and held my hand in the dark. I promised never to eat more than one serving of okra again. And see, she had to go outside. They didn't have even bathrooms in the house, so it was a different way to live. But that's her grandmother taking her out under the moonlight. When I was young in the mountains, we walked across the cow pasture and through the woods carrying our towels. The swimming hole was dark and muddy, and we sometimes saw snakes, but we jumped in anyway. Now, I'm not sure I would do that. Those children are pretty brave to see a snake, so maybe you shouldn't do that if you see a snake, but I guess they knew these snakes wouldn't bother them. So see, they just walked to the little creek in the mountains. You can see the mountains in the background, and that's where they did their swimming. They didn't have a pool to go to. So on our way home, we stopped at Mr. Crawford's for a mound of white butter. Mr. and Mrs. Crawford looked alike and always smelled of sweet milk. So there are Mr. and Mrs. Crawford, and instead of going to Kroger or Walmart to get their groceries, they had to go to this little general food stand and get their eggs and milk and butter and things. And then they raised a lot of things on their own farm. So in some ways, we're kind of going back to that today. We have little markets to go to, and it's really fun. That's how they used to do it in olden times. So they're Mr. and Mrs. Crawford in their store. When I was young in the mountains, we pumped pails of water from the well at the bottom of the hill and heated the water in round tin tubs for our baths. So look what they had to do. They had to pump the water in that and then take it all the way back up to the house and then heat it over the fire to have a bath. That was a lot of work, wasn't it? But I like this because it shows the moon and it shows the light in the house where they live. Afterward, we stood in front of the old black stove, shivering and giggling while Grandmother heated cocoa on top of the stove. So there they are after their bath. Baths are a lot easier now, aren't they? When I was young in the mountains, we went to church in the schoolhouse on Sundays and sometimes walked with the congregation through the cow pasture to the dark swimming hole for baptisms. So the church and the schoolhouse were the same place on Sundays that they went to the schoolhouse for church. And so their baptisms were in the creek like this, with all the people standing around and the minister and the little boy that's being baptized. My cousin Peter was laid into the water, and his white shirt stuck to him, and my grandmother cried. And she's over there crying, I guess because she feels it's a happy time for her, even though she's crying. And you see the trees in the background. When I was young in the mountains, we listened to frogs sing at dusk and woke the cowbells outside our window. Sometimes a black snake came into the yard, and my grandmother would threaten it with a hoe. Now that grandmother's pretty brave there, but you know, some snakes are good. I'm scared of all snakes, but black snakes are really kind of they're not dangerous and do some good in the garden, even though it's hard for us to think that. But I like this one because you see the little girl and boy, if you look closely in their window watching Grandma take care of the snake, because it did threaten the chickens, and she didn't want it to threaten the chickens. If it did not leave, she used the hoe to kill it. So grandmother's good for grandmother. 4 of us once draped a very long snake, dead of course, across our necks for a photograph. So I'm not sure about doing this either, but look, there's the snake. This is kind of yucky, with all draped across their necks. So, when I was young in the mountains, we sat on the porch swing in the evenings, and Grandfather sharpened pencils with his pocket knife. Grandmother sometimes shelled beans and sometimes braided my hair. The dogs lay around us, and the stars sparkled in the sky, and a bobwhite whistled in the forest. Bobwhite? That's what they say. And just think, there wasn't TV, there weren't movies that you could turn on at night. What they did was sit outside and look at the stars, and that might be something fun for you to do when you're home a lot this summer. Just go outside and look at the stars, and maybe tell a story or something. But they're sitting around shelling their beans, and that's what they're going to have for dinner the next night. And the stars are all out. When I was young in the mountains, I never wanted to go to the ocean. I never wanted to go to the desert. I never wanted to go anywhere else in the world, for I was in the mountains, and that was always enough. The end. Okay, I love that book. Hope you liked it too. Okay, so the next one is Grow, Flower, Grow. And I picked it because I love to garden. I'm trying to do a few tomatoes. I usually do flowers, but I'm trying to do a few tomatoes because I think it's great for us to try to grow our own food. And sometimes you work in the garden and something doesn't grow, and then sometimes you don't do that much and it does great. So sometimes we can't tell. This is a book about this little girl trying to make a flower grow. And the author is Lisa Bruce, and it's illustrated. Remember, that word means the person that does the picture, Rosalind Beardshaw. Okay, Grow, Flower, Grow. I like these pictures because they're real bright and colorful. You go out and you see a lot of flowers that look like that right now. One day, Fran, that's the little girl, found a flower pot filled with soil. Poking out of the top was a tiny green tip. I will grow this flower, Fran said to Fred, that's her doggie. She took it home. Grow, flower, she said, but the tip stayed tiny. You know, things don't just happen right away. You got to have patience in the garden. You know what that word means? Patience means you got to be willing to wait a little bit, and it's hard. It's hard to be patient anytime, but especially in the garden, you have to be patient. I think this flower is hungry, Fran said. So guess what she did? She went to the fridge and she found her favorite food. She gave the flower a slice of pizza. Now, do you think that flowers really like pizza? I cannot believe she thought that, but she did. She was giving the flower everything that she liked to eat that made her grow. The next day, she gave it a piece of cheeseburger. Yuck. I like cheeseburgers, but not in the dirt. Then she gave it spaghetti, 2 chocolate chip cookies, and a large spoonful of strawberry ice cream. Now think about that poor little plant getting all that stuff. That's all the stuff we like to eat. It might give you a stomachache to eat all those things at one time. She even gave it one of Fred's juicy bones. She's trying everything to make it grow. But the flower didn't grow. The tip stayed tiny. And Fran got fed up. She didn't have patience anymore. She was sick of it. "Silly flower," Fran said, and she threw it out the back door. The flower pot fell on the ground and rolled away, and the rain fell on it. That poor flower. But look, it's outside by itself, and it's raining there like it's raining today. The wind blew on it. The sun shone on it. And finally, the green tip grew and grew and grew until one day, Fran and Fred went outside to play. And when they opened the door, a surprise was waiting. A big, beautiful flower just for Fran. And there it is. And so that shows you to have patience, to be able to wait in the garden. It's hard when you plant something. You want it to grow. You want it to grow right now. But if you have patience, they'll grow and bloom. And so there are tons of flowers and vegetables blooming right now. And I love the garden, so I hope you will go outside and look at some flowers and then enjoy seeing them when the sun ever comes out. I guess they need the rain, but we've had a lot of rain lately, this week for sure. Okay, this book, Charlie on Safari, is written by my friend, Margaret Gratz, about her grandson, Charlie. And some of you may know Charlie. And I picked this book because it's also about the garden. My friend Margaret is a big gardener. And I don't know if you know what the word safari means. It means a journey, or usually it means to see wild animals. So this is Charlie on Safari, written and illustrated by Margaret Gratz. And she is an ornithologist. That's a big word, which means she knows about birds, and she knows about butterflies, and she loves nature. So that's why she's done this book with her grandchildren in a safari to see nature in their own backyard. Okay, Charlie on Safari. Charlie lived in a yellow house with green shutters at number 3 Bluebird Lane. It was a quiet, peaceful neighborhood with nice people, friendly dogs, and polite cats. Charlie lived with his father and mother and little sister Lucy and baby brother Michael B. So some of you may know Charlie and Lucy and Michael B. And his loyal dog, guess what his name is? Bow Wow. Bow Wow. Charlie loved his home at number 3 Bluebird Lane. He loved his family and his loyal dog Bow Wow, but Charlie longed for adventure. He wanted to go on a safari, to go to Africa to see lions and elephants and giraffes and zebras. Charlie wanted to go on a safari. I would love to do that too. But Africa's a long way away and it's hard to get there. So Charlie could not travel far in his tricycle. And Charlie and Lucy had to be home every afternoon for quiet time. Y'all may have quiet time too. Every afternoon. It kind of helps your parents out. So it's a good thing to do. And Bow Wow was always homesick when he had to be boarded. So where was Charlie going to find an adventure? Charlie's father suggested that he look for adventure in number 3 Bluebird Lane. Charlie, you and Lucy and Bow Wow could go on a safari in your own backyard, he said. If you're observant, and you know what that word means? That's a big word. Observant means you look around. So what they're saying, if you really look, if you're observant, you will discover that your backyard is truly a wild kingdom. And think about that. You don't think about your own backyard being a wild kingdom, do you? Well, Charlie pondered on this. That means he thought about it for a little while and then decided that a backyard safari might be a good idea. So Charlie grabbed his trusty binoculars and Lucy grabbed her red satin evening bag. I love that Lucy took her red satin bag on her backyard adventure, but there it is. And Bow Wow barked with glee as they went out the back door in search of adventure. Now you might think, what kind of adventure can you find in your own backyard? It's boring, but it's really not. So listen, the safari had begun. The first stop was the bird feeder. Hiding behind a hydrangea bush, Charlie slowly raised his binoculars. Now they're being very quiet and hiding because they don't want to scare away the birds or any of the wildlife out there. "Oh, fellow bird watchers," said Charlie, "I see a handsome red cardinal, a perky tufted titmouse, a contented goldfish, a chatty chickadee. Maybe someday I will be a famous ornithologist." And that means birder, that you know about birds. "Bow Wow," said Lucy, "look at the beautiful birds." Bow Wow wagged his tail and barked enthusiastically. But alas, all of the birds flew away. Charlie just shook his head in dismay. "Lucy, Bow Wow," scolded Charlie, "when you are on safari, you have to be quiet." They didn't know any difference. Back on the trail, the trio hiked past the bird bath. "On to the backyard pond," said Charlie. "Follow me, I'm your fearless leader." Wonder what they're going to find there. At the backyard pond, the adventure seekers spotted a dragonfly, a fierce predator. Do you know what that word means? A predator is an animal that feeds on another animal. And it's just part of the cycle of nature, but dragonflies are predators. And they feed on smaller animals that are around. And the predator was lurking at the water's edge. That means it was hanging around the water's edge. Nearby, a patient frog, an amphibian. This book has a lot of big words, but amphibian is what the scientific term for frogs is. So that's another big word. An amphibian sat waiting for a careless insect to fly into his way. Across the pond, a curious turtle surveyed the scene. Bow Wow barked at the turtle. "Don't bark, Bow Wow," scolded Lucy. "Shh, be quiet." "Shh, be quiet," said Charlie, but it was too late. The dragonfly flew to an overhanging branch. The turtle withdrew into his shell. "Ribbit, ribbit," said the frog, and leaped into the pond. Charlie just shook his head in dismay. Dismay means he's upset. He's mad at his little sister and his dog for not being quiet and scaring all the wildlife away. The safari continued in single file. That means one by one. You might have to do single file at school sometimes. Charlie and Lucy and Bow Wow hiked past the beautiful daylilies to the patio where Charlie's mother had pots of herbs. "Oh, I think we have a caterpillar eating the parsley. I believe this is the larva of the order Lepidoptera." Boy, Charlie's got some big words, and he knows the scientific words for butterfly. It's an exotic eastern black swallowtail butterfly. Lucy poked the caterpillar with her finger, and it stuck out its osmeterium, 2 orange horns. And the caterpillar didn't smell very good. And you know, we have a lot of butterflies in our garden, and one morning I woke up and there were caterpillars all over one of my favorite flowers, eating it. And I was so mad, and I just started picking them off, and I thought, well, the reason we have butterflies is because we have caterpillars. They turn into butterflies. So nature works like that. Sometimes they've got to have a butterfly, you've got to have a caterpillar. But it really made me mad. It was eating up I think it was dill that I was trying to grow, and they just took the heads off the dill. Lucy said, "Charlie, this caterpillar stinks," as she turned up her nose. I don't remember him smelling bad, but I guess this one did. Bow Wow barked, but the caterpillar didn't care. It just kept right on eating the parsley. Charlie just shook his head in dismay. They can't eat a lot of things in your garden. Moving right along, the safari headed for the flowers. Butterflies everywhere. And of course, those caterpillars turn into butterflies, like I just said. Perhaps Charlie didn't have a tiger or a zebra in his backyard, but in the flower garden, there was a tiger swallowtail butterfly. I think that's that one. No, that's that one. And a zebra swallowtail butterfly. I need to learn my butterflies. I don't know, but those are beautiful. And other butterflies. Oh, that's the tiger and zebra, and this is the monarch. They're beautiful. They're kind of the king of butterflies. Gulf fritillaries and yellow sulfurs. Charlie and Lucy and Bow Wow laughed and chased butterflies, but the butterflies didn't seem to mind all the commotion. The flower garden and butterflies were so much fun, but there was more adventure ahead. At the rose bed, Charlie, who was very knowledgeable about insects, spied a ladybug. You may have seen some of them. Lucy, said Charlie, a ladybug is red with black spots. Ladybugs eat aphids, which are rose pests. This ladybug is a rose's best friend. And ladybugs are also supposed to be good luck, although sometimes they get in your house, and there are a lot of them there and don't like that, but if they crawl on you, they're supposed to be good luck. In the rose garden, Lucy discovered another insect, a fierce-looking praying mantis. That's kind of scary looking. Yikes, said Lucy, even though she was really trying to be quiet. Lucy, a praying mantis is like a ladybug. They eat bad bugs. They won't hurt you. She won't hurt you. Then Bow Wow, who was also trying very hard to be quiet, began to bark ferociously at a huge bug in the mulch, and Lucy screamed again. Charlie just shook his head in dismay. Margaret, she used the word dismay a lot. That's a big word that means he's upset, he's dismayed. Fear not, said Charlie. It won't be a rhinoceros, but it is a rhinoceros beetle, the largest beetle in North America. How exciting to find this beetle in my own backyard. Boy, Charlie knows a lot of insects, doesn't he? And butterflies and birds. Now, Lucy and Bow Wow, let's go look for spiders, said Charlie, ever the intrepid one. That means the brave one. I do think arachnids are so interesting. This time it was Lucy and Bow Wow who shook their heads in dismay. Lucy, spiders can be beautiful. I don't know about that either, but I like Charlotte and Charlotte's Web. You may have read that book. With a reluctant Lucy and Bow Wow close behind, the safari went looking for spiders. On the patio, Charlie spotted a large spider web. In the center of the web was a large black, white, and yellow garden spider. This garden spider is very beneficial. That means it does good things. And I do believe this is the largest spider I've ever seen. Lucy really wanted to scream. It was so big. And Bow Wow was ready to bark, but Charlie was getting perturbed. So they tried to be brave and quiet. It's hard to be brave with spiders and snakes. Leaving the garden spider behind, they forged ahead to the zinnia patch where Charlie found a green lynx spider. It may not be a wild lynx because a wild lynx is some kind of tiger. But a lynx spider will do, Charlie said. This arachnid is called a lynx spider because it pounces on its prey just like a cat would do. Charlie, said Lucy, Bow Wow and I don't like spiders. Can we please look for something else? Okay, said Charlie, let's take a break. Sitting on the bench by the hummingbird feeder, Charlie, Lucy, and Bow Wow ate cookies that Lucy had brought in her red satin evening bag. Overhead, ruby-throated hummingbirds flew in and out like daredevil pilots. Lucy didn't scream, and Bow Wow, the loyal dog, did not bark. They just ducked every time a hummingbird flew by. And you know, hummingbirds are so tiny, but they dart around so fast. Maybe you have some of those in your yard. I just love watching them. They're so fast and they're so tiny. And it's amazing that they feed up until the fall, and then they swim across the Gulf of Mexico. And you can't imagine that a bird that tiny would actually be able to do that. It's just an amazing thing of nature. After the cookie break, the adventure continued, and on they trekked to the vegetable patch. Oh my, a rabbit is eating the lettuce, said Charlie. Bow Wow, the loyal dog, barked and chased the rabbit away. And there's a green snake, screamed Lucy and Bow Wow not far behind. They ran all the way home. They'd had enough adventure for that day. Charlie didn't have time to comment on the snake's beauty or explain to Lucy that the green snake was harmless. The green snake is also a garden snake, and you know, it's hard for me to like any snakes, but they don't hurt you and they eat things that tear up your garden. So the snake, Charlie knew that. The snake gave Charlie a puzzled look and slowly slithered away. That's hard to say, slowly slithered. But every good safari must come to an end. So Charlie headed home for lunch and his quiet time. Remember, quiet time for your good time every day. When Charlie grows up, he may travel to faraway places and go on a safari. But until then, he can always find adventure in his own backyard behind the yellow house with green shutters at number 3 Bluebird Lane. The end. Okay. Oh, and we want to give a thank you. Thank you. For Mr. Jack. I would have done this if Mr. Jack had asked me to. But anyway, let's give a round of applause for our healthcare workers still. And all the people on the front line that are still trying to help us during this pandemic. And thank you all for listening in. Go read a book. It'll make you smarter if you just read, and come to Reads and get a watermelon. Okay, bye.